Hello, welcome to this second episode of this YouTube series, Building Effective Productivity Systems. It's brought to you by Effective Faith. My name's Chris Wood and I run Effective Faith. Today we're thinking about the basic organizational structure of a good and effective productivity system. Now, if you followed my advice in the previous episode, which you can see a link to on your screen now, all about capturing everything, then you'll have been capturing everything indiscriminately for the past couple of weeks. Your task manager's inbox is going to be brimming, your notes app is brimming, your calendar is full of all the different events and commitments that you have for the upcoming week. So the question is, what do you do with it all? Now, before we go through that, let's begin with a key principle. And you'll probably have heard this somewhere before. Like goes with like, and a home for everything. That's a key principle. Here's another. Keep it simple, stupid. If you put these two ideas together, then you'll end up with a fairly comprehensive means of organising all of your tasks, all of your notes, all of your commitments, but without it becoming a massive burden and taking up loads of time to keep it all organised, to keep everything in the right place. That's the aim. Anyway, that's what we're shooting for here. Now, one of the things that I'm slowly realising as I've watched productivity YouTube channels, as I've read productivity blog posts, as I've tried all of the latest apps, one of the things I've realised is you don't actually need to do everything that you can do. Two very famous quotes come to mind. George Mallory, British mountain climber who participated in 3 expeditions up Everest in the early 1920s. He was once asked the question by a news reporter, "Why do you want to climb Mount Everest?" His response is now famous. Because it's there. A simple productivity system will not use features and organizational functionalities and methods for that reason alone, because they're there. A simple system won't do things just because you can. And that brings the second quote to mind. This is actually from Ian Malcolm from the movie Jurassic Park, as he evaluates InGen's scientific breakthrough in creating dinosaurs. He says, your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should. You see, we all face temptation to create systems and workflows to track and measure all kinds of different things. We try to work out how we can do it without actually stopping to think whether or not we need to, whether or not doing it actually provides any value to us in getting our work done, in focusing our lives on what's important. And a simple system is not going to do that. So to keep things simple, I have 4 basic tools. The basic tools I have a task manager, which is Todoist. I have a notes application, which is Upnote. I have a calendar. For this, I use Google Calendar, although sometimes I'll sort of show it through Apple Calendar on my Mac or Cron on a Windows PC. But generally speaking, I use Google. And then you'll need a cloud storage digital filing system that comes with a word processor, a spreadsheet functionality, that kind of thing. For that, I use Google Drive. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into each of these different tools and applications and just show you the basics of how I organize them. And in upcoming videos, I'll show you what I do with projects, what I do with content creation and management, but I won't explain this now. Partly that's because I'm currently trialing a system where all of this is in Todoist, so I'll show you that in due course once I've got it figured out. But for right now, I'm just going to show you the overview. And then over the next 5 or 6 episodes, I'll explain in detail how I set up each of these tools and how I manage projects and how I manage content. So let's first of all go into Todoist. So here we are in Todoist. This is my real Todoist account here. I don't have a demo one, although as time goes on, I may need to set that up simply because there's quite a lot in here that I don't want to broadcast over the internet. But anyway, I'm starting here in the inbox. I've got a test task already there, and I'm just going to show you the organizational structure down the sidebar. on the left-hand side here. So I'm going to start off here with the time sectors. So I use Carl Pauline's time sector system, and what that basically means is that the main lists that I use, project folder lists that I use, are the time sectors this week, next week, this month, next month, this term, and long term. And most of the tasks that I will create and add into my inbox will go into one of these folders. And there's many different ways you can do that. For example, you can just drag and drop and dump it in this week. Or if you were adding a task, I could use the hashtag and then start typing this week and put it in this week. You can add a label in Todoist fairly straightforwardly by using the @ symbol, and then that brings up all of your labels. You can add a priority by P1 or 2, or not 12, P2, whatever, and that adds a priority. And that, once you finish writing the task, that will automatically put it in the right folder this week as you selected there. So the main reason why I do this is because it occurred to me recently that one of the brilliant aspects of this system is that you have to organise your tasks by time anyway. Because if you're going to do a task on a Wednesday, then you have to allocate it to Wednesday. You're always going to be organising your tasks by time. You might choose to organise them by sort of category, life bucket, area of focus, project, whatever, but you have to do it by time. So the way this system works is you start by organising your tasks by when you're planning to do them. But when I open up my this week folder in my this week planning, at that point I can think about what tasks would batch in different areas with one another and then plan them for a specific day and do it that way. So it's just a much more simple system and a much more effective system because it forces you to think about the thing that matters most. When are you actually going to do it? And that's why this is where the bulk of my tasks go. Now, it's slightly tweaked from Carl Pauline's version because he has a section within his This Week folder called Recurring Areas of Focus. You've seen I've put it down here as a separate list. The only reason I've done that really is so it shows up on a different colour in my list of tasks for today, and it just helps me to see that it's come from a different place. I then have this Effective Faith list, which is where all of my content creation happens. I will show that in an upcoming video in more detail. So you'll see here I've got this projects list as well. Now I'm currently toying with this and playing around with it a bit. So what this has is it has in it like a board view of all of the different projects that I'm currently working on, that are currently on my mind, organised by status. I will show this probably in the next video. I can just track those projects and sort of move them through the different statuses as I go. You'll note that it's also got tasks, sub-projects underneath it. This is something else that I'm toying with because I'm finding it helpful with some projects to have some of my project tasks actually grouped together as a project in Todoist. And I've just set them up using this template, and I'll explain why in a second, where the whole project is broken down into these time sector sections. And every task in the project will go in one of these time sector sections. So that's that. Then I have my routines folder, which is where I put all of my basic, everyday, not so much meaningless tasks. They're important. They kind of need to be done. But they're things like tracking my habits, doing my end of day planning, sweeping the floor, and stuff like that. I have purpose and objectives, which is not something I use. It's just there because I made it a while ago and I haven't got rid of it yet. The Alexa to-do list and the Alexa shopping list are just because I've got a Fitbit that uses Alexa and I can add items to my Todoist inbox using Alexa, and they come in here basically. So that's how I organise all of my projects in Todoist. And then I also have some favourite filters and labels. So I've got my today's objectives. that's just a list of all of my key must do today tasks. Today's focus, which is a list of all of the key and important tasks that I want to do today, using version of Carl Pauline's 2+8 prioritization system. These are the main and important tasks that I want to do during the day. And then I've got a couple that relate to tomorrow's focus, which is the same as today's focus, but for tomorrow, and then tomorrow is just everything that's due tomorrow. And then I have these filters set up for this week and next week. I've actually got filters for all of the different time sectors. Now, what these do is these filters will bring in any task, so the this week filter will bring in any task that's in the this week time sector, but it will also bring in any task that is in the this week section of any project. So this filter basically contains every task that I'm planning to do this week. This filter contains every task that I'm planning to do next week, and so on and so on. And that is how I set up Todoist. I would normally work from my today's focus point, which just shows me all of the key things that I'm planning to do today. And then towards the end of the day, when all of these things are done, I would head to my today view, and that would just have a few other extra routines in there, some of which I might have already done, others of which I might need to do before I finish my day. So that's how I organise Todoist. Now we're going to look at Upnote. This is Upnote, as you've seen before, and this is how I organise Upnote. Now, I use a slightly tweaked version of Tiago Forte's para method that he uses in building a second brain. So everything, all of my notes are in projects, areas, resources, or archive. The Effective Faith one here is just all of the content that I've written or published. And then the demo one is one that you may have seen on some of the Upnote videos. The tweaked version is I have this notebook, which is for planning, and inside that I've got plans for 2023, a dashboard, which is just some of the keynotes that you'll see in quick access in a moment. Got some stuff relating to goals. Planning and review is mostly just checklists, daily planning, weekly planning, monthly planning, and then vision and values is just much, much higher level thinking. Active projects, and I have future projects, and this is just, I have a notebook for every project, which is where all of the notes go for that project. I'll show you that in the next week's video. Areas, these are just important areas of life that are sort of ongoing, so I've got them grouped in family, ministry, personal, and work. Again, in a later time, I may show you more detail about how that gets organised. Resources is just things like information about apps, articles, videos and talks, book notes, books to read, Bible studies, anything basically that might be a resource for something else. And then archive is just where stuff gets dumped when I'm finished with it. Most of the time I will use the quick access. These are the quick access notes. So the main one that I use all the time through the day is the command hub. If you check out the video that's on the screen now that shows about creating dashboards in Upnote, you'll see the command hub there. This is my plan for the current month, which is obviously May 2023. This week's projects I'll show you in an upcoming video. Master reading list is just the books that I'm reading, and I'll talk through that again when I come onto that part of this series. And then theology curriculum, morning and evening routines. Those are just other important notes that I access all of the time. So that's the basics of how I organise Upnote. This is my calendar. As you can see, I'm using Google Calendar here. Now, the big principle is that I like to keep my calendar clean and clear, specifically for stuff that I'm committed to doing, whether that's meetings with other people or things that I've specifically planned to do myself, whether or not that is like focused work or exercise or whatever. I don't tend to put things on my calendar that I'm hoping to do, but things that I specifically am committed to doing. It's kind of a version of Carl Pauline's rule, what goes on the calendar gets done. And so your calendar is kind of like the single source of truth. The basic reason for that is your calendar gives you 24 hours and only a limited number of hours that you're actually going to be awake and that you can use. You can't over plan your day on your calendar. I mean, I could, if I wanted to over plan, say, oh, I'll write my blog post in 10 minutes. The trouble is, I know that I'm kidding myself. I'm not going to be able to write a blog post in 10 minutes. I need an hour and a half for that. You know, if you try to lie to yourself through your calendar, that it doesn't work. In terms of how I organise it, I have 5 calendars that I use. So I've got a calendar for family stuff. That's anything that I'm doing with my family. I have a calendar for personal stuff. This is primarily things related to exercise or self-development. So you can see, for example, I've got coding. I'm learning to code. That's on there. It also relates to sort of any medical appointments or whatever that I might have that are just for me. I've got a calendar which is set up for effective faith. Now, this is where I plan when I'm going to do things like write my podcast script, write my blog post, film the YouTube videos, edit and publish the YouTube videos. All of this kind of stuff requires time, and I've found that if I don't block that off on my calendar, it's not going to happen. So I do that, and I plan about a week or so in advance when I'm going to do all of this stuff. And then I have another one for work, which is basically related to any work that I'm doing that's not effective faith. The only stuff that's blocked in here at the moment is my weekly planning session, and then I have a couple of communication related slots each day where I go through emails and messages and things like that. So this is basically how I organise my calendar. And that brings me to the last thing, which is my cloud storage, Google Drive. This is the one that links to effective faith, and I'll show you this one for now. I organise this with the PARA method from Building a Second Brain, Tiago Forte's book, so projects, areas, resources, and archive. I don't do a lot of organising of my files, really. Partly that's because the search in Google Drive is so good. I never really need to do much organising. But I tend to have these 4 top folders, and then underneath them I will have other folders. But I'll only go down 2 levels. You'll see here that these 3 files are not organised, so I will organise them by moving them to the correct folder, and it's just gonna, I think it's even gonna suggest, there we go, EF podcast. Let's move that there. There we go, and those things are organised. And it works basically in the same way as my Notes app. It's worth saying that I use the Notes app for most of the thinking, writing, working that I do. That's what I do in Upnote. But anything formal that needs to be delivered to other people or sent to other people will be done in a Google Doc or a Google Sheet. And then that will be organised into one of these 4 folders. So that's how I organise my cloud storage. And so there you have it. That's a basic overview of the main tools and apps that I use in my system: Todoist, Upnote, Google Calendar, and Google Drive. That's a basic overview of how I organise each of them. In the next videos, I will talk to you, I think next time I'll talk to you about how I manage projects and how I'll start talking to you about how I manage projects. And then I'll look in more detail at all the different things that I do in Todoist and how I use that in the day. I will go into a little bit more detail about how I use Upnote day to day. And then I'll probably do one video about how I organise my calendar and my time. And then future videos about cloud storage and content management. So please do subscribe if you want to see those videos. There's a subscribe button, so click that. And then there's going to be a couple more videos that you can check out here. Please do like this video if you found it valuable, and we'll see you for the next video.